All right, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Akshay. I'm presenting. This is my project called "The Effects of Different Arm Angles When Throwing." So I'll be taking you through the background, purpose, methods, results, and the conclusions of the study that I ran. So basically, the point of this was to see how throwing mechanics affects the strain on elbow ligaments. I used a 3D printed model arm with 3D printed bones and rubber bands serving as ligaments. And muscles and tendons were intentionally left out so I could hone in on ligament strain and not have to focus on any other confounding variables. And so in the end, spoiler alert, the key finding was that the sidearm throw 75 degrees with pronation generated the greatest ligament elongation micro tears. And so this finding provides insights into injury prevention, biomechanics, and how you can be safer with your body without sacrificing uh, competitiveness. So, pitching is one of the most biomechanically demanding movements in all the sports, and different pitch types like fastballs, curveballs, sliders, changeup, etc. They all have unique stresses that they place on the arm, and the angle at which a pitcher throws, which is called their arm slot, play the key role in determining whether their stress is felt more at the shoulder, which is more stable, or at the elbow, which is less stable. And for this reason, higher arm angles, which is more overhand, tend to be felt more at the shoulder, and lower arm angles like sidearm shift stress to the elbow. And that's bad for lots of reasons because these mechanics are very important because they really affect injury risk and recovery times for athletes, and the more sidearm you throw, the harder it is for you to be able to recover in the future because of the overuse and the repetitive motion. So a little context about this injuries. The ulnar collateral ligament or UCL is one of the most commonly injured ligaments in baseball players, specifically pitchers, and youth pitchers experience an injury rate of about 2.22 per 1,000 exposures. Professional players have a much higher rate of about, I think, 312 per 1,000 exposures because of how often they're throwing, how hard they're throwing, because they're professional athletes, they need to throw really hard. And preventative training programs like stretching, yoga, dynamic mobility can cut injury rates almost in half. Um, and nutrition is also really important. Vitamin C, adequate protein, collagen, electrolytes all support recovery and reduce fatigue, which helps reduce injury risk. So now we're going into my experiment. The purpose of my experiment was to identify which combination of throwing angle and pronation generates the highest strain on the elbow ligament. So I predicted that it would be the sidearm throw with pronation because of the increased valgus force it places on the elbow joint. And this hypothesis is really important because it directly addresses a real world problem for lots of people, whether certain mechanics are riskier than others, whether certain mechanics work better than others. And this finding could help coaches and athletes make informed decisions about playing styles and training. So for my experiment, I constructed a model arm using 3D printed bones representing the humerus, ulna, and radius. I attached rubber bands to replace the elasticity of the ligaments, and I used CA glue to ensure strong and realistic connections. As I said before, muscles and tendons were intentionally excluded so that the model would focus solely on ligament strain. And also, I'm on a budget, so I can't really like replicate muscles that easily. Um, while rubber bands don't perfectly mimic real ligaments, they allow me to measure elongation and stress in a consistent and controlled way. So I tested three different angles: 35 degrees, which is overhead, 45, which is about three quarters, and 75, which is side on. So each angle is tested under two conditions: one with forearm pronation and one without. So I moved the model arm manually, and I use visual inspection along with video recording to measure ligament elongation micro tears. and I randomized the throws so that if I did all the 35-degree, all the 45-degree, all the sidearm, obviously the sidearm would perform significantly worse because of all the stress it was on before I got to those trials. So I randomized the throws to reduce bias. Um, this is my model. So actually the printer ran out of white ink, so I had to use glow in the dark. And yeah, so this is it. As you can see, the ligaments here are the same length and this at approximately the same strength as they're supposed to be in a human arm. And yeah, that's it. And these are my complete findings. So as we can see here, the 75-degree throw in orange was much worse for the arm than any of the other ones. The 35-degree was not as bad because of the stress it puts on the shoulder, which is not a huge amount of stress because the shoulder is way more stable than the elbow. But the stress it puts on the shoulder takes away a lot of the stress that it puts on the elbow. And 45 degrees is about in the middle, and 75 degrees is way out here. And this is with pronation, so um the stress it puts on the interior UCL is almost double with pronation than without. And yeah, in general, 75 degrees is just supposed to be really bad for your arm. And so the general trend that I observed is that as the throwing angle increased, the strain on the ligaments also increased, and adding pronation increased the strain at every angle. And most significant damage occurred during the sidearm throw at 75 degrees with forearm pronation. And this condition resulted in the greatest elongation tearing of the ligaments. And if you're not sure, pronation is when you twist your thumb like inward, like that. Can you see that? Okay. Um, so these findings directly support the original hypothesis that this throwing style would be most damaging. And looking at the numbers, the anterior ulnar collateral ligament, the anterior UCL, experienced elongation of almost 30% during the 75-degree pronated throw. The way I calculated this, I used Logger Pro, and so I took a video of this, put it in there, and I measured the initial length, and then during the throw, I measured the maximum length. So that's how I found that number. So this is a very high level of strain that would almost certainly cause a real ligament to snap or at least partially tear. The posterior UCL reached up to 10% strain, and the RCL and the annular ligament were about 9 to 10. And the transverse UCL was not affected very much. Overall, these numbers confirm that the anterior UCL is the most vulnerable structure during high stress throws. And if we go back here, the anterior UCL is on the inside of your elbow, right around here. Um, so these results support the hypothesis that the 75-degree sidearm throw with pronation produces the highest valgus stress in the elbow. The anterior UCL was consistently the most vulnerable ligament throughout all the trials, but the RCL and the annular ligament also showed a little bit of involvement at higher angles. One limitation at the study is that the throws were performed manually because I didn't have a way to perform them with constant force, constant angle. Um, Another limitation is rubber bands. Rubber bands do not um 100% mimic real ligaments, and also the absence of muscles and tendons means that the stabilizing effect of the rotator cuff muscles and as well as your bicep and tricep were not included. Despite all this, the findings align with what has been shown in medicine and in real life baseball, where sidearm pitchers have a higher prevalence of UCL injuries. So, in conclusion, this experiment demonstrated that the sidearm throw, 75 degrees of pronation, produced the greatest ligament strain, as I've said many times, particularly in the anterior UCL, which showed elongation as high as 29.9%, 0.49, sorry. Lower angle throws like 35 and 45 degrees resulted in far less strain and minimal ligament damage. And these findings explain why modern pitchers often rely on fastballs and changeups, which do not require pronation and put less stress on the elbow rather than sliders and curveballs, which demand pronation and increase injury risk. So the implications of the study. So for training, athletes and coaches should emphasize proper mechanics that reduce valgus stress on the elbow, specifically for the stabilizing muscles in your shoulder and the rest of your arm. Um, the increased strength in those is very important. For prevention, definitely stretching, mobility training, balance work, yoga, proper nutrition, getting your vitamin C, collagen, protein. That's really important for protecting ligament health. For rehabilitation, the findings can guide the development of more effective recovery protocols for UCL injuries. And beyond baseball, these findings highlight the importance of biomechanics in sports medicine can be applied to any athlete from youth players to professionals. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Akshay. If you have time to answer a few questions, I have some for you. I think the first thing I'm so curious about is if you did have unlimited resources, it sounds like, you obviously didn't have everything that you could have. What would you have, what was the first thing that you would have done differently?
I would have definitely incorporated muscles because muscles are so important in any movement, especially in a biomechanically demanding movement, like throwing a ball. It requires your whole body from your neck to your legs to your hips. So muscles are really important, not just for stabilization, but for strength also, because we've seen many times if you're not strong in one muscle, a different muscle tries to compensate, and that's how you get hurt. And with ligaments are the things that get torn and twisted when you hurt yourself like this, but muscles are also important for prevention or causation.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I assume you probably are a baseball player from doing this project.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, awesome. Well, what advice would you give to youth pitchers about, what to do to stay healthy?
I don't know, just be smart. If you're not feeling it, just come out of the game. Don't go over 30 to 40 pitches until I don't know, until you're maybe 17 or 18 because your body's not ready for that because you may be an athlete, but you're also a child and children should grow and develop without putting too much stress on their bodies. Sports is good for you, but when you overdo it, nothing's good for you.
Yeah. And do you think that this your findings here could help with real athletes and coaches in the future?
Yeah, I think so because well, in sports in general, overuse is the one and only cause for injuries because you hit your head too hard multiple times, you get CTE. You take too many hits to the knee, your career's over. You tear your ACL. Um, and like lots of injuries in the same spot. That's what ends careers. That's what like crushes dreams. So I feel like being able to avoid repetitive pressure on like areas of the body, I feel like that's really important.
Yeah, awesome. And final question, what's your sports team?
I play for the Bragmar Pine Rams. Go Rams, of course. We are 2-5 right now, and not the best of starts, but we'll find a way.
Awesome.
Oh, my sports team. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I love the Steelers. Go Steelers. I think Mike Tomlin needs to get it together a little bit. But other than that, yeah, the Pittsburgh Panthers are playing right now. Go Pitt.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you shared your own team as well. Cool. Thank you so much. That was very interesting.
Of course.
And
Thank you.